Welcome to another episode of the Steal a Moment podcast with me, Mike LeBois. Today's guest is the one and only Taylor Hahn from Hahn Audio, the master engineer and co-producer of all of Gunpowder Empire's music to this point. Taylor and I talk about the importance of advertising your own stuff, promoting your own stuff, as well as his way of handling things inside the studio. It's been fantastic getting a chance to talk to Taylor, as he's a great guy, one of the best in the business here in Colorado for a lot of reasons, and has been for quite a while. If you guys get a chance to head over to hanaudio.com and look at opportunities to work with him, he's fantastic. I highly recommend it. If you guys haven't yet, please right down here, click that subscribe button. Looking at my analytics from the last episode, only 72% of you are not subscribed. It's a pretty large number. So if you want to, please head over there, click that subscribe button, click the bell notifications. That'll give you guys an opportunity. Also, if you click right here, click that like button and let me know that you like the episode. It'd be great. Every episode I have a secret word. I don't think I put one in the episode this time, but when you guys hear the word delete, there is a point in the episode where it says, give you the time code. And when Taylor says delete for the first time, you guys will, I'll come up with something. I'm working on a plan to get some items out there to people. Frankie, our boy Vertigo Child, found the, hit me up first time with the list of Rivals songs. So Frank, I'll hit you up in a couple of weeks and see what I can get to you, man. Also, there's a couple things in the works. We're expanding the network. I actually have created a network through all of this called Red Hood Rising Podcasts, and we're expanding the network to another show that I'll be hosting with a couple of awesome dudes. This is coming up. I can't give you guys any more information than that, so be on the lookout for that as well. If you guys haven't yet, head over to the Gunpowder Empire page and check out all of the new videos we have. We have 2 cover videos that have just been put up over the last couple of months. We have the Through Bloodshot Eyes video. I'm still working on the lyric video for Evil Within. Man, that thing is brutal. It is a lot of work, and I applaud guys like Travis Owen and other people for being able to do that stuff. It's kind of ridiculous. So I appreciate everybody who does that. The stuff is absolutely insane, and I'm crazy proud of those who can make it work. Also, if you guys haven't yet, head over to Spotify, Apple Music, anywhere you guys get your music and purchase or stream Evil Within as much as possible. I've been listening to it a lot lately because of the lyric video. So actually, I've really grown to love that song for a lot of reasons. There's some really cool dynamics in it. Check it out. With that being said, Taylor and I would like to steal a moment. Cool. So what's going on, man? Seems like you've been staying busy this year already. You got a lot of projects coming through. Songs getting released on random Fridays in February. I mean, I'm one of those artists. How have you been staying? Have you been staying busy so far this year? It seems like.
I have. I think a lot of people, or a lot of bands and artists, they got super motivated at the top of the year, and COVID or not, they were just like, let's keep our passion alive and record music. So I got hit up a lot, and my spring and summer is already booked, and so it's pretty cool, especially to be in a pandemic and to be a studio that's as busy as I am.
Yeah, man, I definitely can attest to how busy you are as we're trying to get some time with you here. We gotta get that all figured out in the next few weeks. We can make sure we're at least gonna get in. How busy you are, man.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to knock out one song like you guys are, you guys have 2 on the deck. So, I mean, to do one at a time, that's, we can make that work. But as for like, if you were going to do anything more than 2-3 songs at a time, I mean, I can't get you in until middle of July. So
Yeah,
which
and
is
that's one of the
crazy, 'cause
cool things. It's crazy, yeah. Because like, for those of you who don't know, Gunpowder Empire, the band that I front and do the bass thing for, Taylor has been the engineer, and we'll give you a co-producer title in there as well, for everything we've recorded for this project so far. So he's the reason we get such great quality out of the music that we produce, and it's awesome to actually get to work with you on a regular basis. Our first experience together was actually in a different project, which was interesting to see
yes.
how that worked through. What are some of the biggest, I guess, bugaboos you run into with bands when it comes to your side of it, and then what comes after you're done?
Ooh, that's a hot topic, man. Um, that is something that I'm passionate about. I think obviously the biggest bugaboo of all is there's so many talented artists not promoting their music correctly. And there's so many songs that are being written and recorded, not even by me, but just in general, that just, they're not being promoted properly, advertised, the whole 9 yards of it, just not being done properly. And so many good songs are not being heard because of it. And I'm definitely passionate about it because, we work on a record and we spend a lot of time on it. And I want people to hear it just as much as the artist wants people to hear it, because for me, that's longevity. It's, if I do a record that does well, more people are going to hear it. And, in turn, hopefully more people are like, oh, that's a good sounding record. Where was it done? We'd like to, get that same quality. But yeah, my biggest bugaboo is just yelling at bands and artists and being like, your one Facebook post a month isn't going to cut it. You're, not doing a music video, a visual with your audio is you got to have that nowadays. It's 2021 and people are glued to their phones visually all the time, and they want to see that, let alone hear it. So yeah, that's a bugaboo for me. And yeah.
Yeah, I can attest to that. You and I have had conversations about this in the past. In some situations, it's unfortunate because the one thing that this industry runs on is money. And
Yes.
a lot of these bands don't have those opportunities to get those things done the way that they can and should. But sometimes you make sacrifices. You don't get that fancy dinner that one night because you got to pay for a music video 2 weeks from now,
Yeah.
or you have to find ways to make things to work out that way. I mean, I know I have to save a little extra because I got to go in the studio and work with Taylor next week or something like that. We as artists have to find moments where we can sacrifice to make those things happen. And sometimes, you don't always see eye to eye with the rest of your bandmates when it comes to that kind of stuff. And that's also unfortunate too. I'm sure you've run into situations where one or two members of a project don't seem to be as invested as one or two members in that said project, and it also kind of affects how it's promoted as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I made a Facebook post a couple weeks ago talking about band members justifying keeping a band member around, and they're holding, if you have a band member that's not into it, not promoting properly, not even practicing their craft, it's just like, why are they in that band? And I get it starts off as fun, and you start a band with your friends and you're jamming in your room or your garage or something, and it starts off that way, and that's awesome. But there's a point in every band's career where it's like, okay, like, do we want to just play that one show every 3-4 months and maybe have band practice, or do we want to be that band that, when a national act rolls through, we're the phone call that the promoter makes, Do we want to go on tour? Do we want to be running more as a business? And when that shift happens, I always view it as like Gunpowder Empire. You were the vocalist and bass player of that band. That is your job. You are employed by Gunpowder Empire to play bass and do vocals. And if you're not doing that job well, like any normal job in society, you would get fired. And the band part of it, an artist part of it, like that just doesn't cross over for some reason. And and they just people just, oh, well, we've been friends for forever, and he's it's hard to replace such and such. It took forever for us to find this music, whatever you needed, bass player,
Right.
guitar player, vocalist, and I get that. But for the bands that are wanting to push to that next level and continue to push, you can't, all five of you got to be on the same ship, all steering and going the same way. And when that doesn't happen, you're doing circles in the sea. And
Yeah.
yeah, so that's another, I guess, bugaboo hot topic, because I see it all the time. I see it with a bunch of bands that roll through, and there's that one member that, for me, I play band mom when I was in my band, and I call them band moms because those are the ones that, get you where you need to be on time, schedule, and, just all of the behind the scenes stuff, that a mom would do. So for me, I'm definitely like more passionate and into it, but it's just like for those members that come in and make a record and they record their part and they're like, all right, cool. Can't wait to like hear when it's done. And it's just like, you don't want to hear how the rest of the process goes. I have guitar players and bass players that just come in, do their part, and they leave. And they don't care how the vocals come out. They just assume it's going to go well. And then those are the most opinionated people in mixed revision time. And that irritates me so much. And it's just like, you didn't want to take the time to be here for the making of the record, and why this part got shortened, why this, XYZ, and then they're mad. So, and it happens with multiple bands and multiple genres. It's not, happens a lot. So.
Well, and that's one of those things I think that's most important, is especially with an engineer like you who has an opinion about the pieces that he's putting together. Like, I know we love it. That's one of the reasons we keep coming back is, certain songs you hear apart and you're like, what if we tried this? What if we did this? What if we tweaked this part? What if we moved this part here and see how it sounds? Just if it sucks, we'll put it back. But if it works and it makes it better, then awesome. Like, that's what happened with Through Bloodshot Eyes, in my opinion, was like finding ways to change things. And also, as an artist, we are more invested in what we've created already through pre-production, through performing it live, all that. So to have an extra set of ears on it and have someone who's not emotionally, like 100% emotionally invested in what's presented, it gives you a fresh set of eyes and ears on it, and somebody who'd be like, I want to try this, let's see how this works. And that's one of the things I love about your particular style.
Well, thank you, I appreciate that. Yeah, that's something because to me, for the bands that allow it, I'll say that first, is every band that I talk with, we have a meeting and we go, hey, what role am I playing in making this record? Am I going to play just an engineer role where I just make sure we get good takes? Or are we talking about song construction, arrangements, ideas, and stuff like that? And for the bands that are like, yeah, no, we want you to play the music producer role, help us bring our songs to that next level. It's really easy for me because I'm not emotionally attached and invested into any particular part of the song. There was one band that I worked with over the summer. They came in and they did 5 songs. Their runtime was very long. For 5 songs, I think we were almost at like 40 minutes. For 5 songs, that's just crazy long. And this band is not a prog rock band, I'll say that. Because some of those songs you can get away with, the 7-8 minute long songs. They were not this band. And I had a conversation with them. I kind of sat them all down. I was like, hey guys, here's our reality, and this was the expectations that you guys came in with. So I'm gonna talk with you guys, and I think, this is the direction we should go with things. And we ended up shaving off like probably a minute and a half to some even 3 minutes of their songs off. And we got that runtime down to, I think, like 29 minutes or just under 30. And we cut out sections of the songs, and I was like, hey, this is a great part. Let's not play it 32 bars. Maybe let's just play it 8 or even 16, cut it in half. And for the younger bands, sometimes not rehearsing and writing with a metronome, your songs can get very long because you just kind of have riff A and riff B, and you just slide them together. And riff A you wrote at 110 BPM, and riff B was at 160 when you wrote it that one evening in your room. And now you have 8 different tempo changes in your song, which is fine if it's done intentionally. But, most
Right.
of today's mainstream music doesn't have tempo changes. It's one tempo all the way through. And so, yeah, it just kind of, I love, being a part of those process and being that 5th or 6th member of the band and being like, hey, try this, let's try this. Delete is an easy button. That's what I always say is, we can always, control Z and go back. So, but some people, I get it. It's your passion. You spent all night in your room writing that part, or you were up late writing those lyrics. And, I come in and take out a part or move something around, and some members get mad.
Yes, they do.
But my biggest thing is, I'm here for the song, and I want to make the song work, not your part and not your ego. So
Yeah.
that's, but I always tell bands, at the end of the day, no matter what, you can tell me if an idea sucks, if you don't like it, if you want to keep your 8-minute long song, or if you don't want to change, you know what I mean? Like I had a session today where I was like, hey, I think we should do vocal harmonies. And the vocalist just like, I really don't think we should have vocal harmonies on the song. And I was just like, okay, well, do you want to try them to see how they sound? And he was just kind of like, no, I don't want vocal harmonies on the song. I was like, cool, all right, we're done then. Good job,
Right.
Great session. Yeah, just didn't want, it's your guys' music at the end of the day, and my job is to make you guys happy and to give you a product that you're happy with. So, if a band wants it, I'll do it. I'll do whatever they want me, what they tell me to do. But like I said, I'm always going to try to do what's best and serve the song.
Fun story about the last 2 songs that we recorded with you. I don't know if I ever told you this or if you knew, unless you've watched the podcast. I've mentioned it a couple times. We rewrote the lyrics for Through Bloodshot Eyes and Evil Within like 36 hours before we came into the studio.
I think I remember you
rewrote
saying
both
that,
songs.
especially.
Yeah, pretty much from top to bottom. Like we kept a little bit of each one. Like the choruses, I think, were pretty much the only things that were locked in lyrically. Alex, our drummer, and Sean and I got together and just kind of like brainstormed for like 4 or 5 hours and came out with something that was way better. And you were speaking about vocal harmonies. I'm trying to think of how many times I've said, I can't hit that. And you're like, just try it. Just get in there and do it. And I do it. And I'm like, oh, holy shit, I did it. That's one of the things I also really love about working with you is like you push people to try things that are out of their comfort zone. For me, early on, my high range was just like, I didn't think I had one. I thought it was always squeaky and broken. And then finding ways to like encourage artists. How does that translate for you as the engineer and somebody who works with music all the time? How does it feel knowing like when you encourage somebody and they get it, does that give you that same kind of like, awesome, like I'm really happy we tried this? How do you feel about those kind of situations?
I mean, I love it. I think that's why I come and do this every day. I get to see, bands reactions like that. And the biggest thing of all is just like, I touched a little bit earlier. It's just like, you guys are so passionate about your music and writing this stuff and rehearsing it. And my job is to try to bring that out more, and bring it to life. And back to, where I'm not emotionally attached to anything. I also hear it differently, because I'm an outsider. I have an outside perspective. I wasn't in the band practice writing the song and stuff like that. So it's really cool to be a part of that process and helping bands write and pushing bands. And that's the other thing too, is like, and I've always preached to you, is just like, you will remember the experience far more than you will how the mix came out. And this comes back to Spiked Audio. I don't know if you remember Michael Morrissey at Spiked Audio. That's where Red Tide originally started recording. That's where I met them. But he was somebody that I always watched, and I, was mentored under him, and he always helped bands and me personally. It's like, hey, I'm going to try to make you better. I'm going to try to make you a better musician, better artist, a better songwriter, and stuff like that. And that's what I really want to do, is just, I want to help everyone be better, because the end goal for all of us is to keep doing this, longevity wise. We want to be able to keep recording music. You want to be able to keep writing and performing, and hopefully one day performing again with COVID. But yeah, I think, back to the question, is just like, yeah, I love it. I love watching an artist's idea come to life and hearing it come out of the speakers for the first time. And I just worked with a band over this past weekend where I think 3 out of the 5 had never recorded before. And I love being a part of that process and teaching them and going, hey, this is how this works. This is how this is done. This is why we do this. And to have that impact on somebody. And I've worked with drummers that have never played with metronomes, and they're some of the tightest drummers that I know now, because I sat down with them and I said, hey, this is a click track. This is a metronome. And this is how you practice and rehearse to it. And this is why it's going to make you a better drummer, and it's going to make your songs better. And in turn, just everyone's going to be better because of it. So, and the real truth is, the better you guys are, the better I can be. Because just a better musician is just easier to work with, and it just sounds better out of the gate. So when I work with a good band, a good artist, the mixes are just better. And and that's why there's tons of bands that I work with, and they send me demos and I go, man, this is a great sounding song. And I was like, because the song sounds so good, it makes the record sound a little better, and I get some real crappy demos sometimes, and they're just like, it sounds horrible. And I'm like, yeah, but the song kind of hides it a little bit. So when the song is better, the artist is better, everything just works better.
I can tell you right now, you got some crappy demos from us every once in a while, I'm sure. But that's just like when we send you stuff that's early, when it's in the infant stages.
And it's so funny, because every time someone like Sean or you or any of the bands I work with, they send me these demos and they go, don't judge the quality. And I was like, if the quality was good, you wouldn't be sending me. You wouldn't be sending me demos. We wouldn't be talking about recording a record. So it's like, why am I going to sit here and go, my goodness, this demo is trash? Like, can this band even record? You know what I mean? It's just like, no, like, you're coming to see me for a reason. So, for the bands that send me demos, it's simply just to get an idea of the arrangements. Is the song good? I just got demos sent from a band last week. He sent me 3 different demos, and all of them were over 6 minutes. And I called him and I was like, why are all these 6 minutes? And he kind of explained. He's like, well, I just hash out my ideas, and and I'll consolidate them and try to figure them out. I'm like, cool. I was like, because you're not a band you're not a 6 minute band. No. Like, you're like a 3.5, maybe 4 minute band. This is that type of band. And that's really what I just, that's what I run into a lot of. It's just a lot of artists that have these goals and expectations of what they want to do. They want to be on tour. They want to have people listen to their music, but they write and arrange their music completely polar opposite. And that's the biggest thing that I think I run into on the younger side of musicians, is helping bands arrange and try harmonies and try other guitar parts. And, for the bands that, I have a talk with them and I go, what kind of record are we making? Are we doing like a full produced record, or, like a one guitar player band? Sometimes they'll be like, oh, we don't want to do anything we can't do live. I'm like, that's cool. I respect that, but it's 2021 and people want to listen to your record and have a great experience. So sometimes having that extra guitar part is going to enhance the music experience. Sometimes having that background vocal that maybe you can't do live because no one in your band can sing, but other than the actual vocalist, so you can't have a background vocal. All of those things just help the music part of it sound better on record. And yeah, so I went off on a tangent.
Exactly.
Sorry.
And I think no, but you answered the question properly and then went into a next topic. That's what I like to do. Because it's true though. Like I think one of the things that I really appreciated, because I can only speak from my personal experience with you, so I can't put words in the mouth of Steve Nelson. I can't do that to him.
Yeah.
He and I aren't the same brain. But like for instance, with us and the acoustic EP, it was the little subtleties of like adding a bass kick here and there, or creating a reverb in this particular spot, or developing a different back guitar, or adding in Eve's backup vocals on the cover.
Yeah.
Like, things like that, little minor details that create this bigger picture. And I think that's one of the things that I really appreciate about working with you and working with engineers that really care about, may not be emotionally invested, but you give a shit. And I've worked with engineers where it's just been like, hit space bar, record. Okay, great.
Yeah.
That sounded pretty good. Let's try one more and then we'll pick the best of the three. That's not how I like to run, anything. In the scary part is the guy that, I'm not going to name names, but the person that did that with us has won awards. Like this was 20 years, almost like 10, 15 years ago. Like, it was a long time ago. But like working with you and working with a guy like Jeff Cannon, who has been doing all the Red Tide stuff lately. They're now Anti-Saint. They've changed their name as of last year. Working with you and working with him, you guys have these involved mindsets where you're like, that sounds really good. That sounds like what we're looking for, but maybe let's try this one different thing. And like you said, delete is an easy key. I think it's the most important thing is if you don't try it, you'll never hear it. So you have to give it a shot. And I think that's one of those things that I love about recording with you and recording with Jeff and talented engineers is like, you guys have an ear to hear something that maybe we don't hear. And it makes it a lot different for us. But one of the things I wanted to ask you too, specifically about COVID and how this whole situation is kind of handled. Do you think because we don't have the opportunity to play live as much right now in certain areas? I know I've talked to a lot of bands from Texas who are playing shows and doing live gigs right now.
Yeah.
How has that helped bring in the recorded music industry, and how have you seen sort of a benefit from that, or have you seen a benefit from that?
I would say there's some benefits to it. I think for the bands that didn't let COVID, kind of take them down, for the artists that, really still tried to find ways to be proactive and, and to get their music out there. And it's like, yes, being in a band and being an artist and performing live is a huge part of being an artist and being in a band. But it's not the end all be all, you know what I mean? There's so much more to it. There's the recording part of it. There's the social media aspect part of it, which most bands completely suck at. And I think for this year in 2020, the bands that were like, okay, let's really dive into what social media is and let's learn this and figure out how to still flourish and still be somewhat relevant in the music industry that's put on pause right now. For those bands, they definitely benefited. And there were tons of bands that I just totally saw fall off a cliff. And, and I have to be respectful and understanding that, yes, the live part of music is so key to what we do, but it's not that end all be all. And there were so many people that were just like, everything's taken away from me. Like, I can't do this, I can't do that. And it's just like, well, people haven't stopped listening to music. Like, we have Spotify, Apple Music, we have, every
YouTube music.
social media platform you can get music from. I was like, people still want to hear your music, regardless if you're a band that had 10 monthly listeners or for the band that had millions of monthly listeners. You still want to try to get your music out to your fans. And I guess the biggest people that really flourished in all of this was actually the singer-songwriters, the artists that didn't have a full band. Because and everyone's different. Everyone responded differently to COVID. You have the people that, they didn't want to leave their house at all. They didn't want to see anybody, didn't want to touch anything outside of their house, which is totally fine and respectful. And then you had other bands and people in those bands that they didn't care. Life wanted to go as normal for them. But for those bands where you maybe had a member that was, I'm not leaving my house. I'm not outside is bad. I'm not going out there. When you have a drummer that's doing that, or a guitar player or a vocalist, it's hard to practice. It's hard to rehearse when you don't have band members that don't want to continue to record. And the first 2-3 months of quarantine, no one wanted to leave their house, which was totally fine. And but now that we've kind of gone through the year, and it's just like, all right, like COVID, yes, it's bad, but like, how do we adapt and move forward, like we've done with everything in life? Is bands are rehearsing again, bands are practicing, but there are some bands that still have members that are like, I'm not coming to practice, I don't want to do it. So they have suffered quite a bit. But the singer-songwriters that haven't had, it's just them, their guitar or piano or something in their room, I worked with a lot of those at the end of the summer. I was doing a lot of acoustic sessions and a lot of just piano vocal sessions, stuff like that. And it was awesome. And it was cool to watch that flourish and come to life. So
what do you prefer to do? Like, what's your favorite style? What kind of bands do you enjoy doing the most? I'm not trying to pigeonhole you. If you said Gunpowder Empire, I'd know you were lying. So
there's one band I work with, and I won't out, and this particular member, he's so hilarious. He'll be like, and he'll say the band name, why is this band your favorite band? Or no, what is your favorite band to work with and why is it us? But I think my favorite genre, it's hard because I grew up playing metal. I was in a metal band. I played guitar. So like the metalcore, the rock, the death metal stuff, like I love it. I love mixing that stuff and hearing that stuff come together. But then the pop punk stuff and the melodic singing stuff is a lot of fun as well. And, but then I mix records for LA pop people, and like, I'm talking like, top 50s pop music style stuff. And, I love it all. And I never wanted to be an engineer that was stuck with one genre. I didn't want to be that studio that was like, oh, you're a metal band, you go to Taylor. Oh, like you're an acoustic band, you go to Taylor. Oh, you do hip hop, you go to Taylor. It was, oh, you do music and you're a band, you can go to Taylor. And I wanted to be that engineer that was well rehearsed with, when you work with an indie folk band, the kick drum does not need to hit you in the chest like it does a metal band. And you have to learn and figure out how those styles work and what works with those styles. And but I would say my favorite genre of music is the band that promotes it the best.
That's the right answer.
That could be, I love watching a band, regardless of how good they are. If a band calls me and they're motivated and they have a plan to be like, hey, this is our plan. We want to record this. We're doing a music video. We're doing promoting XYZ. I love it. I'm like, yes. Like, I don't care if it's 1 song or 10 songs. I don't care if it's a band that's their first time recording or they're seasoned musicians. Like, I love that, no matter the style of music. But I will say, editing drums for like a tech death metal band it's exhausting.
I could imagine, because you have so many different parts you have to focus on and all the different things that they do. And oh man,
nope. Angelic Desolation. I love those dudes, and But man, they are so technical, and it's awesome. But man, it is, and they know this too. It's their stuff to edit, not because they're poor players or anything like that. It's just it is so intricate. There's a lot of moving parts to their music, and it's awesome. It sounds great. So,
what do you like to listen to outside of the stuff that you work, or do you not really listen to music outside of what you work on?
It's funny. My joke with Sarah, every time we get in the car and go somewhere, whether it's the grocery store or going out to dinner or something, I usually plug my phone in, and it's like, all right, let me listen to the latest mix that I have working on in the studio, just to kind of reference it in the car.
Right.
When I'm at the gym, it's usually, I would say, maybe 30-40% of what I'm listening to at the gym is probably a mix, or maybe it's demos of something that that's coming up that I need to get familiar with the song, or maybe it's listening to a reference that a band sent me to be like, hey, we really like the drum tone on this record, we want to try to do something similar. So it's like, all right, let me listen to it. There was one band, I remember I was mixing this pop record and they loved the Chainsmokers, so I think for about a week I listened to nothing but Chainsmokers and Halsey and all of those kind of EDM style pop stuff that was happening at that time. So I was like, all right, let me get familiar with it. But as far as if I'm not quote unquote working and listening to stuff for the studio and stuff like that, I mean, I would say, like, I still listen to the metal stuff, like the As I Lay Dying, I Killed the Prom Queen, Kill Switch. I would say I'm not as familiar with some of today's new metal stuff as far as a daily listener. I'll be like, oh, have you heard this record? I'd be like, nah, like I haven't checked it out for my personal enjoyment, but I checked it out to hear, what's the guitar tone sound like, what's the drum tone sound like, so I know what's happening in those genres. Ed Sheeran is my all-time favorite artist. I think he is I think he's the songwriter of our generation. It's just like you look back at it, everyone's like the Beatles, they were the song, and it's just like,
yeah.
And then maybe like Tom Petty, for the 80s, and it's just like, I think Ed Sheeran is his songwriting is so good, and you see it not in only his stuff, but so much he writes for so many different artists. But Ed Sheeran, I think he's been my most topped streamed artist on Spotify the last 2 years. I think All Time Low was a close second, and they're pop punk band.
Fun. I love All Time Low.
Yeah, are all great stuff. But I really, when people are like, oh, I listen to everything, and like, oh, you listen to metal? I'm like, oh no, I don't listen to that screamo stuff. But I think for me, as I got serious into this industry, it was like, okay, what about this music can I respect? And it wasn't so much, do I like it, as more of like, let me listen to it so I can respect the artistic craft behind it, because maybe one day I'm going to record it. And but I would say, like, my least listened to music is probably like gangster hip hop, stuff like that. But but country music, from like May to September, I'm probably listening to some country. I don't know what it is. As soon as it warms up and you can roll the windows down while you drive, country music sounds good to me. So
fair enough. I don't listen to a whole lot of country. I'll be honest about that. I will say that having a girlfriend has kind of influenced some of the stuff I've listened to.
Sure.
Since Hillary and I have been together for a year. Yeah. So now I actually have gotten really into I think I was talking to Travis Owen of Averse and Project Vela for this podcast, and it's something called like deep bass, guys like Elenium and OTR and stuff like that. It's like deep bass pop, but it's interesting. I find it interesting. And I definitely can say, as I've become more of a professional musician, in the sense that like I do it more often than I used to, and I'm more invested in it than I used to be, like pretty much since Red Tide. I listen to music completely differently. There are certain genres that I just can't seem to find a niche in, just because it's not that I don't respect the craft. It's that I don't find something that I don't truly love about it. And what's interesting is that's also changed my flavor on certain musicians. One of them being Taylor Swift, and the other one being Justin Bieber. I've found things that I like about his music that are intricate enough for me to be interested to continue to listen. And that's one of those things that I don't think a lot of people like. That's another thing I think musicians struggle with too when they're writing music, is they're not necessarily looking at it from the perspective of the listener. They're looking at it as a perspective of the musician. So those guys that are writing 6-7 minute songs who are not in a 6-7 minute song genre are hearing it in their head versus hearing it as a listener. And I think that's a big part of what we as artists need people like you to do for us, is be like, whoa, man, like that part's really amazing. It's super intricate, but you might have lost the audience here with this part in this song. Like I've had that happen before in studio. Not with you per se. I think we've had moments where we've had to turn and change some things, but like in all seriousness, that's another reason why I love going to a studio, working with an engineer or a producer, is sometimes you get too technical, I guess, in certain senses. A band like Angelic Desolation, they're gonna be technical. That's just who they are. Like that's like, but if we went in and we're like, we have this song and it's like Gunpowder Empire, and then out of nowhere it's like, but there's this like really intense Dance Gavin Dance influence where like the guitars make no sense and the vocals don't match the guitar pattern and the drums are doing this whole other thing, but it's not fitting with what was in the core. You know, that's one of those things that I think I definitely need when I'm coming into a studio. And you know, we can do great demos, but I definitely need the added effect of having someone like you to kind of pick at it and make it better. I can attest to our first experience together being a bit difficult for me, as I wasn't able to kind of help put some details in certain spots with certain songs. Granted, the songs at that point were almost 3.5 years old, and like had already been kind of locked in for other people in the project. But like, you know, how often do you run into situations, and I'm not gonna, you don't have to answer this question if you don't want to, where you've kind of got a band who really doesn't seem to understand that it's not going to be perfect when it's released, and it's not going to be, you know, they invest so much time and money in something that kind of has now faded into the sunset, but they still want to get it out. Has that happened often, or does it kind of not as often as you would expect? I guess, I don't know.
I guess I'm trying to understand your question. So like, are you meaning
something that seems like it's like, okay, I'm just going to just put it out there. Like the project that I was working on previously with you before we started with the Gunpowder stuff. That project, those songs had been sitting for 3 years, essentially, creating a gap between the timeline that it was created to the timeline that it was released. The musicians in the project all changed, and the music technically got better. But you know, the situation ran where the person involved in the situation essentially wanted it to sound the way it sounded and not really take too much of a change in direction. Have you ever had a situation where a project kind of gets stuck in a state where it needs to come out, but the person wants it to be just right, but that never seems to be the case? Like, I feel like that happens very rarely.
Well, I guess I have two answers to that question. Is there's definitely records that take way too long and should have been done a lot sooner. But then there's also the records that I do where, you know, we start getting real nitpicky in mixing. And, we're changing things that 90% of a listener are not even going to realize is being changed and stuff like that. So I think when we get to that part of the song, it's just like, when you get to that 90% part of it, it's in my eyes, it's really 100%, because if we're changing a fade from 1 second to 3 seconds on, like a guitar ring out, like I'm all for, the details and stuff like that. But at some point you just go, no one's going to know this. This isn't even going to, this isn't make or breaking the song in any way. You know what I mean? And like, I get mixed notes and they're like, snare drum sounds weird. And I go, what about that snare drum sounds weird? It sounds like a snare drum to me. Like, what do you want me to make it, like at this point in the mix, it's just like, it's a snare drum. What do what are we changing on it? It's not gonna, like, that tone, I'm kind of going down a rabbit hole right now, but
Yeah, I know
adding 8K, of 5 dB boost as opposed to 2D, that's not gonna make or break a song or anything like that. But yeah, and then there's bands that I work with where, they might have been sitting on this record and of writing it for the last 4 or 5 years. But I always tell bands is like, just because you're sick of it doesn't mean you're a listener of it, because no one's heard it. I have band members come in and like, oh, we're so sick of these songs. We've been here for, 5 years. We've had these songs. I'm just like, cool. Nobody knows that. The stuff that we listen to on a mainstream level, like, you think you're sick of your songs. The big bands, they go and record their songs. They probably record 15 to 20 songs, and they pick the best 10 to 12 of those songs. After they're done recording it, there's usually a year of planning to promote it. And so they're sitting on that record for a year, as opposed to some bands that get their masters back and the next morning they want it on Spotify. But yeah, so they're sitting on their records for, a year or so, and then it comes out, and then they have to tour that record for the next year and a half, 2 years. And
Yeah.
if a local band tells me they're sick of their songs, I was like, you're not cut out for this business. Like,
nope.
You're going to be playing these songs for the rest of your life, especially if they're ones that are successful. And
yep.
So I don't know if those answer your questions or not, but
oh, it does. Yeah, I got you.
At some point, you can play with a mix all day. Like, we could go back to some of the Gunpowder Empire mixes and we could find things to change. That doesn't mean they're right or they're wrong. It doesn't mean it's needed or not. You get to a place where you go, the song is working, the mix is working, it sounds great. Let's move forward so we can continue to write more songs. So.
Yeah, and what's crazy is when you're getting down to like decibel levels of guitar tracks, you're putting yourself in a weird position. Of like trying to figure out exactly what you're trying to do. I've always been, when I hear a mix, I always have 3 things in my head. Can I hear myself vocally? Yeah. Do the guitars get drowned out by anything? And how does it balance? Yeah. That's all I ever care about. And if it sounds like something's off, I make a suggestion of, I think that, the guitars can go up higher a little bit in this part if this is where the mix sits. But, we also have had situations where people bring in code words and things that make no sense. And it's always fun to try and figure out and decipher those situations. Because I've run into situations where I've had bandmates in many different projects who are like trying to explain an instrument they don't play or explain a part that they don't have knowledge of. And they're like, well, what if we tried it like this? I was like, well, we can't try it like that because we've already recorded everything. And this is the second to last mix before we send it to mastering. Yeah. How are we going to change that? Yeah. But, you run into those situations sometimes. And I can attest to the recording studio being a time where like there's bass parts that I, would sound really good, but I know I can't play it. But I don't have an ego enough to be like, I'll fucking figure it out. It's like, Sean, if you think you can play this, play it. I'm more than happy to hand off and try things. I think we've had you try some guitar stuff recorded wise on a couple of tracks. You're like, this is what I'm hearing. Let me play it for you. And then I don't know if we've ever left any of them in, but like, I think it's always fun to like do those kind of things, especially with you.
Yeah. I mean, there's tons of records that I'm on that I don't
uncredited guitar parts.
It's not like I post a like, new release from this band, such and such, I don't go, like for instance, we'll just use your band as an example. It's like, I don't sit here, meaning use your band name, but it's like, oh, Gunpowder Empire, new song. I played the solo from a minute 10 to a minute 30. Like, I don't post, you know what I mean? Like, I don't do that stuff. I just go, hey, I was a part of helping bringing this record to life. And I don't have an ego on, like, I don't say, hey, I recorded the background octave chords in the chorus on the guitar, woo me. Like, no, I don't care. And that's the other thing too, is like, for those bands that I work with where like, say a musician has an ego, and thankfully it's gotten, as I've been doing this longer, and I think just the caliber of artists that I work with, like when I was younger, I used to get those guys that were like, no, I'm playing my parts. I don't want him to play my parts. And back then when I was younger, I would be like, okay, yeah. We'll spend here the next 5 hours playing the parts. Sure, let's try it. Because I was a new music producer. I wanted to make everyone happy. But nowadays, that shit's not gonna fly. I'm like, bro, no. I'll give you a couple tries. You can't get it. We're gonna get somebody, your other guitar player that can play it clean. He's gonna do it. Like, get over it. Like, you're not gonna hand your disc out and be like, here's my disc, song 2. I tracked the bridge part because our other guitar player couldn't do it. Like, nobody does that, And
no.
So, but yeah, there's I'm on a lot of records. There's a lot of credits that I think, could definitely be talked about. But at the end of the day, it's not about me. It's the band, and it's the song's awesome, and I just want to be a part about helping making the song awesome. And if that's me tracking a bass part, a guitar part, for something cool, there's a If I Fail, they were a pop punk band, and at the time when they came in to make their record, they didn't have a bass player, and Marcus was like, I don't want to play bass, like, and I was like, cool, I'll play bass, because as a music producer, I know like how the bass should be played as far as like from a dynamic standpoint, is it going to be in the way of things? And I was like, cool. I was like, just sit here and, just I'll watch you kind of run through your guitar parts and we'll figure out the bass parts and sections. I tracked the bass on that record, and I have not once made a post, when that record dropped. I wasn't like, yo, new record from this band, I tracked the bass on it. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't do it. And, you want to talk about like other credits and stuff like that, with like Lindsay from The Anchor, like her and I work on vocals together, and I've come up with so many vocal melodies for their records. You know what I mean? But like, that's not something that I just go, hey, like, I wrote these melodies for these choruses, X, Y, and Z. It's just like, no, like, I helped produce and write this record. Listen to it. I hope you enjoy it. Because
that's one of those things. Like for me in particular, like we love having that produced by, engineered and produced by, co-produced by Taylor Hahn. I will say this. If you guys go pick up This Time with Feeling EP, all drum programming by Taylor Hahn. So there you go. You got your credit from me on that one.
All right.
But I've taken up your hour, man. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll definitely have you back on. We could share some more personal stories of studio time with Gunpowder Empire and all the fun stuff that we have coming up in 2021.
Yes.
With the 2 songs we have coming up. But right now, this is the part of the show where I let you promote anything you want to promote. And right now, Taylor, the floor is yours.
All right. Well, again, man, I just want to thank you for having me on here. I really do. And I hope much success for your podcast and moving forward and stuff like that. And I guess if for anyone that's listening to the podcast, if you've enjoyed, what you heard, how how I work with bands and artists in my studio, hahnaudio.com, or any of the Hahn Audio Instagram. My handle is Hahn Audio, so feel free to give me a follow on Instagram. Always doing updates and of who I'm working with and what we're doing. But website is going to be the best point of contact to hear latest mixes. I actually need to put Evil Within up there. I might do that as soon as we hop off. But latest mixes being released and latest up-to-date stuff for the studio with new gear and stuff like that. So I would love to work with you on your next record.
And I will say you guys should definitely work with Taylor. I can say that I have grown as a musician working with you, as a vocalist, as an artist in general. So I appreciate everything that you've done for us and for me personally on that level. And also you're just a great dude, man. Like you're fun to just be around. So it helps like with that vibe of the studio and everything. You know, it makes a huge difference when you can have a more direct relationship with your engineer. And I will attest to this, that having that direct connection with you and being able to reach out to you directly has really helped make these records and these songs significantly better, because we have that personal relationship. And that's something that I think adds to the overall experience of working with you as a great engineer and producer, man. So thank you so much for coming on. And again, thank you for taking some time out. I know you're a very, very busy man. You've done a lot to help me and even mildly inspire me to continue to do this with your live, streams of even mixing has kind of helped me to be like, maybe I should just do this and see what happens. So I hope that this continues to grow. And thanks again, man. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for having me on.
Always, man. You're welcome back anytime. Let me know if you got anything to promote, anything to work with, and I'll jump you to the top of the line.
Perfect, man. Appreciate you. Awesome, man. Thank you.
Cool. Peace.
Bye.
It almost feels like someone else is living my life, 'cause it almost feels